Indeed. I mean, at a time like this, I certainly don't want in any way to get controversial, but could I just ask you about the relationship between Sir Edward and Baroness Thatcher? Did that thaw in recent times, do you think?
Well, I don't know is the honest answer, because I never saw them together very much. Margaret Thatcher defeated Ted Heath for the leadership in 1975, and that obviously created difficulties in their relationship. But I think tonight we should remember him for what he achieved, for what he tried to achieve and wasn't able to, and for the enormous contribution he made to our political life.
Indeed. I mean, the country that we have now is, of course, very different from the one that Sir Edward led 30 plus years ago. Do you have any idea what his feelings were about Britain of today?
Well, he had very strong views on certain issues, particularly on our relationship with the European Union. He was of the generation which had served in the war, which was very deeply concerned at the prospect of further trouble in Europe, and of the generation who saw the European Union as one of the ways in which that could be averted. Now, those views are much less widely held today. But he didn't. He remained of the view that it was very important that we should have a close relationship with the other countries of Europe, and indeed that European political integration should be given a high priority. Now, that's certainly not the view of the current Conservative Party, but Ted Heath always stuck to those views.
Indeed. Well, we very much appreciate your time, Michael Howard. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And our political editor Adam Bolton will be looking back at the life of Sir Edward Heath later in Sky News at 10.
Just some more breaking news tonight, and police in West Yorkshire say they've arrested 6 people under the Prevention of Terrorism Act. It happened in the Beeston area of Leeds, where last week police raided a number of properties following the bomb attacks in London. However, detectives are stressing that although tonight's arrests are part of that investigation, they are unconnected with the bombings in the capital.
Well, following last week's atrocities, it's emerged tonight that new anti-terror measures could be hurried through Parliament. The Lord Chancellor has said that if all the political parties agree, the new laws could take effect before the end of the year.
As the investigation into the attacks continues, questions are being asked about how much MI5 might have known about at least one of the bombers. Sky's Emma Birchley reports.
4 men intent on committing mass murder. These are the first images of the gang just an hour and a half before detonating their deadly cargo. The youngest, Hasib Hussein, was only 18. The bomb he carried in his rucksack would blow up the number 30 bus. 19-year-old Jermaine Lindsay would detonate the deadliest of the 4 devices in the underground at King's Cross. The third bomber, Shehzad Tanweer, would die along with 6 others on the tube in Aldgate. He was 22 and a student. And finally, this man, the oldest at 30, and the man believed to be the ringleader, Mohammed Sadiq Khan, whose bomb would explode at Edgware Road. But 10 days after causing death and chaos in the capital, it's emerged that Khan was already known to the security forces, assessed, according to the Sunday Times, by MI5 last year in connection with an alleged truck bomb plot. It's reported they decided he was only indirectly linked and therefore no threat. As a result, he was not put under surveillance.
This is going to continue. I mean, if they can waste 4 guys in one day, how many more have they got waiting in the wings? You know, we're in a race against time here, and the government's really got to wake up and face up to the fact that the security of the people of this country is a absolutely prime objective of what the government should be doing.
On Friday, it was also revealed that the bomber had visited the Houses of Parliament as a guest of MP John Trickett last July. It was arranged in his role as teaching assistant at a school in Leeds. Investigations into the atrocities continue at home and abroad. In Pakistan, 6 men have now been arrested. Officials say 3 of the bombers visited the country last year. Tanweer is alleged to have attended an Islamic school, staying at this mosque in Faisalabad, and meeting with a Pakistani terror suspect. But the mosque's imam denies Tanweer had been there. We have neither heard of him or seen him, he says, adding the mosque is a peaceful place where people come and pray and then leave. And in Cairo, police are still questioning Magdi El-Nashar, who studied in Leeds and is being linked with the bombers. He denies any involvement. Here in Britain, 11 properties have been searched. Police continue their examinations of 7 in West Yorkshire and 1 in Buckinghamshire. They've also been given until Tuesday to question a man arrested earlier in the week.
It was not an attack on just a few people who lost their lives, but an attack on the entire humanity.
As Muslims hold vigils across Britain, it's emerged 500 imams are to issue a fatwa or Islamic ruling, expressing in the strongest terms their condemnation of the attacks. Now, in the wake of the bombings, the Lord Chancellor has revealed he hopes to rush through new anti-terror measures if opposition parties agree. 3 new offences, including indirect incitement to terrorism, were not expected to come into force until next year. 55 people are now known to have died in the blasts. The bus on which 14 were killed has now been removed. But the search for forensic evidence goes on at all 4 bomb sites in the hunt for those who helped plan the attacks. Emma Birchley, Sky News.
Baghdad has suffered its worst weekend of violence for many weeks. More than 150 people have died in the past 48 hours in a wave of suicide bombings.
The worst violence since April has prompted heavy criticism of the new government for failing to maintain security.
Even by Iraq's violent standards, this week has been one of its bloodiest. A wave of suicide bombings has claimed more than 200 lives and injured more than twice that number. The attackers were indiscriminate in their choice of targets: security personnel and ordinary Iraqis, men, women and children. On Thursday, 13 children were killed as they collected sweets from American soldiers. A car packed with explosives was driven into a US military vehicle. They all lived in a poor suburb in eastern Baghdad. And more bloodshed was to follow. As worshippers gathered late yesterday evening to offer prayers at Al-Musayyib's main mosque, a suicide bomber was to carry out the worst single attack in Iraq for months. Before detonating the explosives strapped to his chest, the bomber opened the valves of a fuel tanker. The explosion set off a fireball that engulfed the neighborhood. The streets were filled with shoppers. Desperate parents threw their children from burning houses to save them. Metal hooks were used to drag people from their blazing cars. Most of the victims were burned beyond recognition. And as the first funerals took place today, more bodies were being recovered from the gutted buildings. As Al-Musayyib mourned, the suicide bombers targeted Baghdad. No fewer than 4 separate attacks rocked the capital today. 3 policemen were killed in this attack. A car bomb blew up just meters from the Electoral Commission building. About an hour later, a second suicide car bomb exploded near a police convoy in the Bayer district of the city. 7 people were killed here. The injured, and there were many, some seriously, were rushed to the local hospital. Almost lost among today's carnage was news from Iraq's special tribunal. The country's former dictator Saddam Hussein has been charged for the first time in connection with a massacre in 1982. A date for his trial will be announced soon. But that will do little to abate the violence. Insurgents loyal to Abu Musab al-Zarqawi have pledged to intensify their deadly campaign of terror. Ashish Joshi, Sky News.
The Ministry of Defence has named the 3 British soldiers who were killed by a roadside bomb in Iraq. They were Private Philip Hewitt and Private Leon Spicer, both from Tamworth, and Second Lieutenant Richard Shearer from Nuneaton. All 3 came from the 1st Battalion, the Staffordshire Regiment, based at Tidworth in Wiltshire.
The Defence Secretary John Reid paid his own tribute to the dead soldiers this evening.
He repeated his assertion that Britain could start a troop pullout from Iraq within a year, but he insisted that British troops will stay in the country as long as it takes.
When and if the Iraqis can take control of their own security lead against the terrorists, then we will hand over to them. We have no long-term imperialist ambitions. We don't want to stay there longer than we're needed or welcome, but we will stay there until the Iraqis themselves can do what is necessary against the terrorists.
14 firefighters have died in a forest fire in Spain's central Guadalajara region, according to a local official. The fire, which broke out on Saturday, is still not under control, and planes and helicopters have been dropping water onto the area to try to calm the flames. There are reports that the fire was started by a barbecue which hadn't been properly extinguished.
Hurricane Emily has been causing havoc on Mexico's Caribbean coast, bringing 150-mile-an-hour winds, pounding waves and torrential rain. Tens of thousands of tourists have been told to evacuate holiday resorts along the coast. The hurricane's already caused severe flooding and mudslides in Jamaica, though there have been no reports of any deaths or injuries.
You're watching Sky News at 10. Still to come, a look back at the life and times of Sir Ted Heath, who's died tonight at the age of 89.
Slovakian success, how Newcastle got their Intertoto Cup campaign off to a winning start.
And Charles is back. Johnny Depp brings a nutty centre to the Willy Wonka remake.
£9, down from £149. That's some drop. Take the plunge. Call 08702 407 729.
Survival depends on the ability to evolve. Introducing the most advanced Mondeo yet. The new 2005 Mondeo. Evolution is beautiful.
This woman is helping to end child abuse. She hasn't written a new thesis on behaviorism. She isn't a cognitive therapist. The solution just came to her at work. She gives £5 a month from her salary to the NSPCC, knowing her employer, the Royal Bank of Scotland, will add twice as much again. Can you and your employer make it happen for the NSPCC?
Red numbers.
Critics.
What does a leader chase?
History.
The limits. More majors. Leaders push the boundaries.
Relentlessly.
The tailor-made R7 pushes driver technology to places it's never been. 4 movable weights, 6 different trajectories.
It set new standards. It's what great leaders do.
TaylorMade, the #1 driver in golf.
Hi, Mum. You all right?
Just feeling a bit bloated.
Yeah, I get that sometimes. Now I'm eating one of these Activia every day. It contains something called bifidus digestivum, a unique culture from Danone which is clinically proven to help improve your natural digestive transit when eaten every day.
Activia, actively good. And now Activia is available with the natural goodness of figs. New Activia with figs.
They're none. For more Sony for your money, it's got to be the Sony Centre Sale. Trade in your old camcorder and get up to £100 off an amazing Sony DVD camcorder and a free 3-year warranty. Pick up this 32-inch LCD TV with DVD recorder and get £100 cash back, 2 years interest-free credit and a free 3-year warranty. And for real peace of mind, get 3-year warranties free on all Sony TVs, cameras and camcorders. The sale's on at Sony Centres nationwide. More Sony for your money.
You're watching Sky News at 10. The top story tonight, the former Prime Minister Sir Edward Heath has died at the age of 89. He led the country between 1970 and 1974, taking us into Europe. Tonight, Baroness Thatcher described him as being a political giant.
Sky's political editor Adam Bolton has been looking back at Ted Heath's career as an MP, which spanned more than 50 years.
Ted Heath's premiership lasted less than 4 years, but that was enough to alter the course of history. He took Britain into the European community with dramatic repercussions for the country and for the Conservative Party.
Well, he was a major figure, partly because he broke the stagnation about our relationship with Europe and put us in the European community. That was a crucial thing.
He became quite possessive about the issue of Europe. He wanted it to be his historic achievement to take us into Europe, and it was very much his personal achievement that he did manage to overcome French resistance and take us in.
Heath led the Tories from 1965 to 75. It was the height of the swinging 60s, and the Conservatives were desperate to find an antidote to Labour's Harold Wilson, who seemed effortlessly to capture the mood of the moment. Though Heath gave the appearance of being a Tory grandee, he was in fact the first of a new breed of meritocratic Conservative leaders. His father was a tradesman and his mother had been in service. But clever and ambitious, the young Ted won scholarships to grammar school, then to university. His passion for politics was forged in the Oxford Union, where he became president. As a student, he travelled to pre-war Germany, attending a Nuremberg rally and meeting Goering, Goebbels and Himmler. This made Heath a fierce opponent of appeasement and convinced him of the need for a unified democratic Europe. Distinguished military service followed during the Second World War, before Heath embarked on his political career. But Edward Heath had the misfortune to become Prime Minister at a time when Britain was bitterly divided and groping for a role in the world. Heath spoke of the unacceptable face of capitalism, and it was under his rule that income distribution was most fair, largely because of high taxes. However, his premiership was blighted by repeated clashes with the miners, which were to prove disastrous.
There is only one thing that might stop us as a nation from solving that problem by fresh effort and fresh achievement. And that is our habit of damaging ourselves by an unnecessary industrial action.
On the 1st of January 1975, Heath was forced to impose a 3-day week in a desperate bid to save energy.
We are asking you to cut down to the absolute minimum the use of electricity for heating and for other purposes in your homes.
Unable to find a compromise, Heath reluctantly threw down the gauntlet, asking the electorate to decide who governs Britain. He hoped the crisis would unite the country behind him. It was a serious miscalculation. Though the Tories won fractionally more votes than Labour, Labour emerged with more seats in Parliament. A second election defeat later the same year effectively ended his tenure as party leader. Even though Heath had promoted his successor, Margaret Thatcher, to the cabinet, his stubborn refusal to embrace the new regime was dubbed the longest sulk in history. Prime Minister for a mere 4 years, Heath was an MP for more than half a century, representing Bexley and Sidcup in Kent, and eventually becoming Father of the House. He maintained a high profile, not least when he made his contentious visit to Saddam Hussein during the First Gulf War to secure the release of British hostages. And he had a rich life beyond Westminster, which would bring him as much fame and some would argue more success than politics. On his racing yacht, Morning Cloud, he captained the world champion team, winning the prestigious Sydney to Hobart race in 1969. As a musician, he won an organ scholarship to Oxford University, going on to be a guest conductor with some of the best international orchestras. What's more, he wrote best-selling books about both hobbies. But above all, Edward Heath was a House of Commons man. When he finally retired as an MP in 2001, he was created a Knight of the Garter, but he refused to go to the House of Lords, an institution for which he never bothered to hide his contempt. Instead, he continued to pursue his musical and business interests, mainly in Japan and China, and to enjoy his home in the close of Salisbury Cathedral.
It's been a remarkably full life, and I've enjoyed it enormously.
Out of all the things he'd done, though, Sir Edward believed his greatest achievement was becoming Prime Minister all those years back in the 1970s.
Let's take a look at the sport now, Charlie.
Lisa, thank you. Good evening. Tiger Woods has won his second Open and with it his 10th major title. He shot a final round 2 under par 70 to finish on 14 under par at St Andrews, 5 shots clear of Colin Montgomery, and with it clinching his 10th major. Shaun Wright-Phillips will be a Chelsea player within the next 48 hours. The England international withdrew from Manchester City's pre-season tour of Thailand after the two clubs agreed a fee of £21 million. Newcastle's Intertoto campaign has got underway with a win. James Milner scoring the third goal in a 3-1 win over ZTS Dubnica in the first leg of their third-round tie. Lance Armstrong's on course for a 7th straight Tour de France. He finished just over 5 minutes behind his teammate George Hincapie on today's 15th stage. Armstrong extending his overall lead to 2 minutes 48 seconds. Australia's bowlers suffered a frustrating day at Grace Road, their last competitive action before the Ashes starts on Thursday. They took just 5 wickets as Leicester scored 363 to secure a draw. Chris Rogers scoring a double century. And we'll have highlights from St Andrews and all the rest of the day's action in Sportsline right after news at 10.
Thousands of fans crammed into Leicester Square tonight for the London premiere of the latest remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes, Hollywood heartthrob Johnny Depp was there to introduce his young British co-star Freddie Highmore, and the fans were delighted. Also there, Sky's Sarah Hughes.
Leicester Square was transformed into a chocolate fantasy land. But as far as the crowd was concerned, the real eye candy was Johnny Depp. The Hollywood star plays Willy Wonka, the eccentric chocolatier.
Well, the original is in fact a book by Roald Dahl. It's a pretty dark character, published in 1964. So, I just tried to do what I thought Roald Dahl might enjoy.
Are the Oompa Loompas really joking, Grandpa?
Of course they're joking.
Charlie Bucket is the boy whose dreams come true when he wins a golden ticket to enter the chocolate factory. He's played by Depp's Finding Neverland co-star Freddie Highmore.
He's a really great guy, and it's funny, the two questions people normally ask is, do you like Johnny and do you like chocolate? And they're both fantastic, but I think Johnny's better than chocolate.
Oh, thank heavens, he's completely unharmed.
The remake's much darker than the 1970s original. In fact, it's far more faithful to Roald Dahl's classic book.
Well, it was just a book that had a lot of impact on me, and I loved it from when I was a child, and sort of kept it inside all these years, and then the studio asked me to do it, so I was ready.
Mr. Wonka?
Huh?
Why would Augustus's name already be in the Oompa Loompa song? Unless
Improvisation is a parlor trick. Anyone can do it.
It cost £86 million to make, but it took £12 million in its first day in the United States alone. The critics have loved it, and many say it's even better than the original. With a big-name star like Johnny Depp, it's certain to be box office candy here too. Sarah Hughes, Sky News, Central London.
Tonight's top stories for you now, and the former Prime Minister, Sir Edward Heath, has died at the age of 89. He led the country between 1970 and 1974, taking us into Europe. He passed away this evening at his home in Salisbury, a week after celebrating his birthday. Tonight, Baroness Thatcher described him as a political giant.
And it's emerged tonight that new anti-terror laws will be rushed through Parliament if agreement can be reached between the political parties.
And remember, you can find out more about today's stories and many others over on Sky News Active, with its 8 screens for you to choose from, all available in full size. Just press the red button, follow the instructions.
Now let's take a look at the first editions of the morning papers, which were printed before it was known that Sir Edward Heath had died. Reports that the London bombings were linked to the government's decision to go to war with Iraq is the top story in The Guardian. The photograph, though, is of Tiger Woods winning the Open Championship in Scotland.
Daily Mail of tomorrow has the same story about the London attacks being linked with the Iraq war. The picture is of the actress Sienna Miller.
The Independent has 6 images from Iraq this month showing the scale and the horror of suicide bombings since the London attacks.
That's Sky News at 10. Sportsline is ahead for you, but first, here's a look at the weather.
Look, I'm really sorry. That area of low pressure should have brought rain. The wind must have changed.
Thompson.co.uk for city breaks.
Clear skies by day and clear skies by night as well for the bulk of England and Wales, even southeastern parts of Ireland. But that cloud, which has been up in the north and the west throughout the day, is now going to start to slip southwards, bringing the rain with it. Shouldn't have too much impact. Some of that rain, as it works its way southwards, will become more showery, but there will be 1 or 2 heavier bursts as well. And before it ever arrives, we've got some fairly heavy showers which are tracking their way through Lincolnshire into Yorkshire, northeastern parts of England too, but eventually they will disappear. By morning, we'll have brighter, clearer weather over the north and the west with just a scattering of showers. Down in the south, though, it's going to start off bright and it remains very hot and sultry. Temperatures in this area around 27, 28 degrees Celsius. That's 82 degrees Fahrenheit. But gradually the cloud will encroach and the rain will move on later in the afternoon. And all of that is replaced by this fresher weather, some sunshine and temperatures not so bad. In the sheltered areas, 23, 24 degrees Celsius. That's 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And the showers are likely to be mostly confined to the north and the west.
In 40 years, transit has changed, but there's one thing that hasn't. The Great Britons that use it. Transit and you.
Sales calls. Never a good time, is there? You've been chosen. Special offer. Let's talk about lagging. So BT has launched BT Privacy, a free sign-up service to help block unwanted sales calls with free caller display, so you can enjoy your privacy in peace.
Sign up free. Call 0800 121 8000 now.
In Mexico, we have a more intimate approach to personal space than many Europeans. At HSBC, we never underestimate the importance of local knowledge.
Don't put me on hold.
Buying car insurance over the phone. It's all talk with those call centres. Click on to swiftcover.com. We cut out call centres, so 70% of our customers could save, and you could get a quote in less than a minute.
What are you up to?
Just stuffing a chicken.
That's a coincidence.
Swiftcover.com. Swift savings. Click, click, don't cluck, cluck.
The AT-man cometh.
Seek out new horizons and begin.
Can I help, Uncle James?
Grown-up stuff. You wouldn't understand. It's far too complicated.
Try computer lessons. There's loads.
Clear off. Unless you want another haircut.
Yell.com. Whatever you want, just yell.
August on Sky Sports. Golf. Action from Europe and the US, including the final major of the year. Athletics, Golden League coverage from Zurich and Brussels. There's Fishomania and the Poker Million final. Tennis, ATP Masters Series and the US Open. Cricket, County Championship action and the Tote Sport League continues. Super League, the race to the playoffs gathers pace. August on Sky Sports. What a month.
Good evening and welcome to Sportsline. World Rally champion Sebastian Loeb has written a new page in the record books. Loeb won the Rally of Argentina to chalk up his 6th consecutive win. The Citroën driver held off the challenge of Marcus Gronholm to win by 26.1 seconds. Peter Solberg was a further 39.2 seconds back in third. Loeb's win puts him 27 points clear of Solberg in the championship with 7 rallies left this season. Now then, back to St Andrews, where Tiger Woods has won his 2nd Open championship with a final round of 2 under par 70. Despite the best efforts of Colin Montgomerie and the rest of the chasing pack, Woods finished 5 clear to clinch his 10th major title.
In the end, it was comfortable for the world number 1. Tiger Woods lifted the claret jug for the 2nd time at the home of golf, 5 shots ahead of Colin Montgomerie. Woods a major winner for the 10th time at the age of 29. But the day had started with high hopes of a Scottish success. The crowds cheered Monty's every move, particularly when he birdied the 3rd and 5th to move to within a stroke of the lead. A cameo from Nick Faldo saw him finish birdie, then eagle. He was well behind the leaders, but it was worth celebrating nonetheless. Playing alongside Tiger on the final day, Spaniard Jose Maria Olazabal threatened a real challenge. He was within a shot when he birdied the 4th, but slipped away. Woods, though, was always on top. His tee shot at the par 4 9th ended up on the green. He'd go on to record a birdie. The final few holes were a victory march for Tiger and his fans. As he tapped in for a par at the last, he was 14 under par, and the celebrations could begin. He's now won both the Masters and the Open this year, and finished 2nd in the US Open. Richard Hemwood, Sky News.
That's part of the deal, when you're out there. You know those guys are making a run, and they should make a run. I mean, they're the best players in the world, and I kept saying to myself that if they make a birdie, like Monty is ahead of me, he's making a run. If he makes birdie ahead of me, if I make birdie in the same hole, it's moot. I mean, we're all square, no blood. So just keep birding the same holes they do, and I should come out on top.
How can one be dissatisfied with the performance where you finish 2nd at the home of golf here to the best player in the world? How can I be dissatisfied with that? I came in here 40th in the world, so I've done a lot better than I should have done, if you know what I mean. So I take a lot of satisfaction from this. A lot of positives come from this.
Well, Woods was never overtaken once he took the lead on the opening day, the first time that's been achieved in 33 years. But Monty's 2nd place was his highest ever in the Open, just a shot ahead of Jose Maria Olazabal and Freddie Couples. Well, while Monty missed out on the main prize, there was success for one of his fellow Scots. Lloyd Saltman won the silver medal awarded to the top amateur at the Open. He beat another Scot, Eric Ramsey, by a shot. Shaun Wright-Phillips will be a Chelsea player within the next 48 hours. The England international withdrew from Manchester City's pre-season tour of Thailand after the 2 clubs agreed a fee of £21 million.
Shaun Wright-Phillips is to be a Chelsea player. After all the wrangling over a long, dramatic weekend, the 23-year-old should join his new club within the next 48 hours after a fee of £21 million was finally accepted by Manchester City. Wright-Phillips' departure, though, is a bitter blow for Stuart Pearce, as he and the rest of his squad flew out to Thailand tonight for the start of their pre-season tour. Pearce remained tight-lipped over the deal, but some of that cash will be used by the Manchester City manager on buying new players. One of them to purchase the unsettled Fulham striker, Andy Cole.
Probably in some ways I've got the added benefit of being a young manager. I've played against a lot of players that I would look to sign. I've either played with them, against them, or know them somewhere down the line. He is one player with a great track record. His goal scoring record's goes without saying. I think he's played in the last 3 seasons an accumulation of some 90 odd 100 matches, which is a lot of matches, so he's fully fit. And as I say, I think he's the sort of player that could come into our place, and certainly the younger players will benefit by having someone of his quality around.
Pearce had wanted to rush through the deal of signing Cole so that he could fly out with the rest of the City squad, but there wasn't enough time to make it happen, and the deal now should be concluded within the next 24 hours. Meanwhile, the Manchester City players will now have to get used to life without Sean Wright-Phillips after 150 league appearances for City and some truly great performances. Jose Mourinho will be looking for more of the same from his new signing. Mark Bishop, Sky News.
Well, Chelsea have been in pre-season action against Benfica. Jose Mourinho's side beating them at the famous Stadium of Light by a 1-0. Ricardo Rocha with an own goal just before half-time. Newcastle United's Intertoto campaign has got underway with a win. Michael Chopra got Newcastle's first in the 4th minute of the first leg of their third-round match against ZTS Dubnica in Mestski. 2 minutes later, who else? Alan Shearer gave them a 2-0 lead, stabbing this one home. But Dubnica were back in the game 3 minutes before the break, thanks to Lucas Tesac. But 20 minutes from the end, James Milner ensured Newcastle went into the second leg with a 2-goal advantage. How about that for a lob? Lance Armstrong can enjoy tomorrow's final rest day with a 7th straight Tour de France firmly in his sights. The extremely tough 6-peak 15th stage was won by Armstrong's teammate George Hincapie, the American reaching the summit of Saint-Lary-Soulan 6 seconds ahead of Oscar Pereiro. Armstrong finished just over 5 minutes further back in 7th, on the wheels of Ivan Basso to extend his overall lead to 2 minutes 48 seconds. This is the overall picture. Armstrong way out in front, looking good for that 7th consecutive win. Basso moves to 2nd, Mikael Rasmussen dropping back to 3rd. Australia's bowlers suffered a frustrating final day of competitive action before the Ashes, mainly thanks to one of their own. They managed only 5 wickets at Grace Road as Leicestershire scored 363 for 5 to secure a draw. Much of the damage to the Australian bowling figures was done by fellow countryman Chris Rogers. They're hitting Brett Lee for 4. Jason Gillespie finished wicketless, as did Michael Kasprowicz, his main rival for a test spot. The fielder's not doing him any favours there. Rogers was particularly savage against the spin of Stuart McGill, who he hit for 6 on his way to a double century. Australia's bowlers toiled away. Leicestershire getting to 247 before Brett Lee finally made a breakthrough. Darren Robinson out for 81. But McGill finally got his man, Rogers chipping him to captain Ricky Ponting at mid-wicket to be gone for 209. McGill finished with figures of 4 for 122.
All in all, it was a little bit of a disappointing day for us, I guess. I think we thought if we could take some wickets to the new ball this morning that we might be able to bowl them out today at some stage. They've ended up scoring a few more than we would have liked, but although Chris Rogers played exceptionally well, he hit anything that was loose away to the boundary and played very, very well. So, but saying that, for us to have a nice, good, long, hard day in the field will certainly hold us in good stead for Thursday.
Warrington are back up to 3rd in the Super League after beating the London Broncos. Victory for Warrington saw them bring an end to London's 7-match unbeaten run. They had to come from behind to do it. Henry Fafili sealing the victory with a late try. Bradford's win at Odsal over bottom club Lee was their first win in 4 games, an emphatic one it was too. They won 58-12. Aussie centre Ben Harris getting a hat-trick of tries for the Bulls, that the most spectacular of the 3. Semi Tadulala got a hat-trick for Wakefield as they beat Widnes in the day's relegation battle. The game was marred by a brawl that saw 4 players sin-binned. The incident was put on report by the referee, the match itself dealing a potentially fatal blow to Widnes in their survival bid. So Warrington climbing back above Hull into third place. No change in the positions of the other teams, although Wakefield open a 5-point gap to Widnes and that relegation zone.